And back to the G20 summit, where leaders of the 20 most developed economies gathered in Hangzhou in China to discuss a lot of issues as they affect global growth. Cybersecurity, falling commodity prices are among the issues raised at the meeting.
U.S. President Barack Obama and Chinese President Xi Jinping take a stroll outside at Westlake State Guest House in Hangzhou. The walk by the leaders of the world's two largest economies comes after China and the United States ratified the Paris Agreement to cut climate warming emissions, marking a major step towards the enactment of the pact as early as the end of the year and setting the stage for other countries to follow suit. The world's two biggest emitters of greenhouse gases made the landmark announcement as heads of states from the group of 20 biggest economies, or G20, arrived for a summit in the city of Hangzhou, parts of which resembled a ghost town as Chinese security locked down the area. U.S. President Barack Obama's last scheduled trip to Asia before leaving office, however, got off to an awkward start. Soon after Air Force One landed, a Chinese security official blocked National Security Advisor Susan Rice on the tarmac, speaking angrily to her before a Secret Service agent stepped between the two. China has gone to great lengths to try to make the September 4th to 5th G20 summit a success, hoping to cement its standing as a global power. But a range of thorny diplomatic topics could overshadow the agenda. The stakes are high for China to pull off a trouble-free G20 summit, its highest profile event of the year, and security in Hangzhou is intense. Volunteer security agents prevented journalists from filming in deserted parts of the normally bustling city of 9 million people. Residents left in droves after authorities declared a week-long holiday for the summit, shut down the city's famous Westlake Beauty Spot, and offered free travel vouchers worth up to 10 billion won to encourage people to visit out-of-town attractions. More than 200 steel mills in surrounding districts were shut as part of a bid to limit pollution. With the summit wedged in between the Brexit vote and the U.S. presidential election, G20 leaders will be keen to mount a defense of free trade and globalization.
And this issue of free trade was actually discussed in another meeting in the G20, which is the B20 meeting, which talked about the sluggish economic growth, which is as a result of fall in commodity prices. And that paved the way for the world leaders to find innovative ways of addressing these challenges. So at the G20 meeting, member countries believe more efforts should be made at finding new economic growth methods to drive global growth during the meeting.
G20 members will work together to revitalize the sluggish world economy and to cultivate new economic growth engines. Chinese President Xi Jinping made the remarks while speaking at the opening ceremony of the Business 20 or B20 summit, part of the G20 summit in Hangzhou, capital of East China's Zhejiang province. Under complex global economic situation and facing various challenges, the international community should embrace high expectations of the G20 Leaders Summit. Innovation has become an important driving force in world economy and a deciding key to the decisive door of world economic growth. It is also important to construct an open world economy so as to expand room for development maneuvers. The history of world economy has proved that openness brings along progress, whereas seclusion and exclusion only lead to stagnation and slump. China says it will make coordinated efforts with other G20 members to push forward the construction of trade and investment mechanism, work out strategy on global trade growth and guiding principles for global investment, consolidate multilateral trading system, and reiterate anti-protectionism pledges.
Let's talk more about the G20 meeting. Joining me is the VOA correspondent covering the G20 summit in China, Bill Ide. Thank you, Bill, for coming on the program.
My pleasure.
Now, China, the host country, has challenged world leaders to act on reviving global growth. How do you think they plan to execute the plans made at this meeting?
Well, one of the key focuses that they have been talking about is innovation and openness, and digital technologies, and using these advances to help spur growth globally. But at the same time, there is the problem of protectionism, and China is not alone in that field. In fact, if you would ask some analysts, it has some pretty serious hurdles to overcome. So we heard a lot of pledges. At this point, we haven't gotten received a joint statement from the meeting yet, so we don't know the nitty-gritty details about how they're going to try to do this. But one of the key things going forward is how individual countries open up to investment in technologies and find ways to collaborate together and use technology to boost growth. Africa has been one of the key focuses on the side. In fact, Angela Merkel made some comments today about that very fact, and about how there was not enough investment in Africa, and that G20 members should look to Africa and find ways to work together to invest in infrastructure and other things.
Now, the falling global commodities have led to the economic crisis in many countries. Now, what strategies do the leaders say would help in transforming these sectors?
At his press conference this evening, President Xi Jinping said that a global forum will be set up to address this problem, and that the members of the G20 have acknowledged that this overcapacity is a global problem, and that they need to work together to find ways to address that. One possibility, of course, if you're listening to what they're saying about investment in infrastructure and overcapacity, I would think, is that they will find ways to maybe work together to use this overcapacity for investment projects throughout the world, including in Africa.
Now, so talking what Chinese President Xi Jinping mentioned, he actually urged leaders of the BRICS member countries to establish a development bank after the model of the IMF and the World Bank. How do you think this would be achieved?
Well, that's a very good question, because we know that China has the capacity to do this, right? It has created the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. But how much willpower there is to do this, I think, is almost an even bigger question than how you would achieve it, because at this point, the relevance of BRICS is waning. There are concerns about that. And the rise of the AIIB has kind of taken away the space for that. So I think at this point it's really hard to tell how they would do it. Obviously they have the capabilities among themselves to do that, but why would they do it in addition to all the other structures that they've already created?
Just one more question, Bill, before I let you go. There have been talks about cyber threats and the impact on national security, of course, on economic growth. Was there any form of agreement among world leaders on how to address this problem?
Unfortunately, because we have not gotten the joint statement yet, I do not know the answer to that question. But we know that this meeting was about trying to not only broaden cooperation among the group of 20 members, but also to expand that beyond. And I think, if anything, we're going to see it's more cooperation and collaboration in this area to address cyber threats. It's still a very sticky issue, though. I mean, if you look at the United States and China and how they've struggled to address this, and the accusations that go back and forth. But one would think that the key to this is finding a way to create a dialogue.
Thank you so much, Bill Ide, VOA correspondent reporting from Hangzhou in China.